morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another installment of Flyera Gonna Flyera, our 43rd episode, folks. We got a good one for you this week. Another 2 weeks through the off season. We've gotten some news since our last episode. Couple rumors we're going to be going over. The worlds have come and gone. We're going to be touching upon that to begin the show. But we had an extension of one of the RFAs. We had some rumors come out about a particular player that the Flyers may or may not have some interest in. We're going to go into a little bit some draft talk, which players might be catching our eye. And then we're going to wrap things up talking to Mr. Jamey Baskow about his interview with one of the high-end prospects that the Flyers may have some interest in. But as always, let's go right into it. Speaking of Mr. Baskow, he's right to my right. Jamey, how you doing today, brother?
Yeah, man. Aloha, mahalo. I'm doing great. Eric, nice hat. Alex, great to be with you, man. Nice to see you again.
Appreciate that. How's the family doing, Jamey?
Man, they're better than me. That's for sure. Man, these kids, man, they're living the American dream and don't even know it.
Got it. Listen, they got a great dad, so that's what really matters out of this, right?
I guess.
Of course.
They run you ragged, that's for sure.
Listen, I can't wait to have one of my own and eventually be in that
situation.
You will. That I can vent to you guys what fatherhood truly is like. Speaking of fatherhood, another one of our Flyera fathers here, Mr. Eric Martino. Eric, how are you doing tonight, brother?
Not too bad, boys. Not too bad. Actually, just quick. It's been like a nice lazy weekend, and today I was actually playing my son in FC 25 from the FIFA game there.
Nice.
I was asked a couple times, so it was a good day. It was a good day.
Nice, dude. That is great.
PlayStation or Xbox?
Nintendo Switch.
Oh,
nice.
That would put me off guard, actually. It's
I
funny
love the
you
Switch.
mention it too. We have a Nintendo Switch as well, but I usually don't use my Nintendo Switch for sports games. I use that more for like some of the old school, like Mario or Zelda.
Cool.
Smash Brothers or something like that. I like the old games like that for Nintendo Switch.
Zelda.
I have an Xbox as well. That's where my sports games come in: NHL, college football, 2K, whole 9 yards. But yeah, I'm a bit of a gamer myself, so I can definitely relate to that, Eric.
Old school for me is Pong. That's my first video game was Pong.
Holy smokes.
Days of Pong and Atari and Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong was like a complicated game. Started with
Donkey Kong Country on the Super NES or the original Donkey Kong?
No, he's talking about the original. Rick, it is a game where you have it's a fat, overweight Italian plumber jumping over barrels trying to rescue a woman named Paula. That has been stolen
that's awesome.
by a giant gorilla.
No, I'm talking about Pong. Pong. A ball would go across the screen like tennis.
I know, but you said Donkey Kong was too complex for you.
Well, I think that's complex compared to Pong.
I think any game is complex compared to Pong.
It is.
Outside of maybe.
I had to throw that in.
All right. Any dang way. Let's get into things. Things have... the worlds have come and gone. The U.S. ended up defeating, I think it was Switzerland in the final. No, not Switzerland. Sweden in the final, if I remember correctly.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Switzerland.
Sweden won bronze.
Yeah, it was Switzerland.
Ended up winning in overtime, if I remember correctly. Did the Flyers have any players from that team? I don't think they
Urson for Sweden.
Sweden, yeah.
It was Sweden. That's what I thought. I was like, well, no, did I say Switzerland? It was Sweden.
No, Switzerland was in the finals with the U.S. Sweden won the bronze, but Urson was on Sweden.
Thank you for correcting me on that. I got a little mix up there. I know the U.S. won the whole thing. It was against Switzerland. Sweden was in the bronze medal. So, quite a few Flyers were in the world. Sam Urson, who looked great, in my opinion, 4-0 at a save percentage of in the almost mid-nines, which is, I think it was like 934.
Yeah, 934, yeah.
Yeah, he played excellent. And then Team Canada was littered with Flyers. Konechny was finding his game, Sanheim, but Tyson Forster really stood out playing on that top line as well. Let's start with you, Eric. What did you think of the Flyers and the Worlds just as a whole?
Well, I thought Urson really impressed me. Because like the whole debate, right, about do we have a starter and whatever, and like, look, Urson didn't look super great at certain points in the season, but just the fact that he had a great tournament, like like we said, he had a 934 save percentage, he had a 116 goals against average. Like, look, I get it, you're not playing against the best of the best, but at the same time, like, it's still like high caliber hockey, and just the fact that he was able to put up those numbers still gives me a little bit of hope. You know what I mean? Like that, at the very least, he could be like a decent starter, maybe, but at least, like we all think, he's at least a tandem. So that was really impressive to me. And yeah, look, Konechny, man, he was just a beast at that tournament. With 13
He was
points.
tied for the team lead in points, if I remember correctly, with McKinnon.
I'm pretty sure he was either first or second. I don't remember.
I think he was second, to be honest with you, because I think one player from Canada had like 16.
Yeah, like 15, 16. I think someone had a little bit more. But anyway, just to say that he was at least second on Team Canada in scoring, and like he put up 13 points, considering, and look, he's making a case for the Olympics.
Oh yeah,
because it's not gonna hurt him that he went there. Like after the season was over, he represented Canada and he showed well. Because we all saw, like, look, when he played in the not the Olympics, but the Four Nations, he only got into 2 games. And I thought, like, the first game at the Nations was a little but then after that he was fine. But anyway, it's just like a really nice showing. Plus, Sanheim was solid like usual.
Yeah. I tend to agree on that, piggyback off of that a little bit. Konechny, I think he had 3 goals and 10 assists, if I remember correctly. He stood out well. But one of the big issues with TK in the second half of the year last year is just his goal scoring touch really fell off. And it looked like, I won't say it continued to fall off, because you're playing with a lot of high-end talent. They had McKinnon, Crosby, Horvat, Celebrini, Noah Dobson. We could go on with names like that we're representing on Team Canada. So you're not looked at as one of the number one options to score, put the puck in the net. But I do want to see him, hopefully, as we get back into next year, get that scoring touch back, because he was coming off a back-to-back 30-plus goal seasons. He dropped to 24 this year after coming out of the gates blistering hot. It's a joke on Flyers Twitter about Mr. October with Konechny, and hopefully he can try to start beating those allegations. I don't know if it's technically Mr. October. It's more Mr. First Half.
Mr.
He kind of
November, December
in the second half. I want to see him hopefully beat those allegations sooner rather than later. So, but overall, good showing. When you put up 13 points in 8 games, that's an excellent showing. Sanheim, as you mentioned, continue to be a sturdy top 4 defenseman style of play. Good in his own end. I think he had a game-winning goal in one of those games, if I remember correctly. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure he had a game-winning goal once. And then Forster, he had one beauty, I believe, going right to left, playing with that Celebrini and McKinnon line, I think is what he was on. Or it was Horvat maybe before Horvat's injury happened.
Yeah.
But, he was getting top line minutes and a lot of some national recognition too, which is something that stood out to me as well. And, you guys know how high I am on Tyson Forster. He's one of, if not my highest young player on this team, not named Matvei Michkov. I think this kid is going to be part of the solution. He's a big body. He plays physical, and he had some real talent around him for him to show that. And I think that this next upcoming year, you saw flashes of what he could potentially bring to the table when he gets some real talent around him and he continues to develop his game. Great shot, fantastic two-way game, monster amongst the boards. He's a kid that I have a lot of faith in. I was glad to see him really showcase his skills a little more during the Worlds and getting that opportunity. So happy to see that. And then, as we mentioned, Sam Urson was dynamite. And as Eric just mentioned, gives some hope that he really could be a good netminder in this league. He had a rough year this year. There's no denying that. He got called into a bigger role with the obvious happening last year. And since then, he's had kind of consistency issues. Like he's been a bit streaky. He'll have runs where he's great net for like 8 or 9 games, and then he suddenly starts to struggle again and the wheels come off. And we have to remind ourselves, he's still young. He's still learning. It's his first year being at the bare minimum of 1A. So seeing that was kind of uplifting. We kind of saw flashes of it in the Four Nations tourney when he had that game. I think it was against, was it the U.S., I believe, that he played against when he was on Team Sweden? I can't remember, but he had a game. I believe he only allowed one goal early in the game, and then he was just lights out the rest of the way. But it was good to see Sam Ersson really build off of himself a little bit. He, as Eric mentioned, under a 1.5 goals against average, 0.93 forced save percentage. He looked comfortable. He looked like he was in his zone. And hopefully Ersson can continue to use something like this to build consistency into next year. But as a whole, I thought the Flyers played well in the Worlds, and hopefully it could be something that can lead into the summer and into next season. Jamey, what did you think?
Yeah, I saw 3 players that should be highly considered to make the Olympics. Travis Konechny, Travis Sanheim, and Samuel Ersson. They should all be at the very least highly considered to make the Olympic team. And I think they showcase themselves enough on the national stage, and not just the Worlds, but the previous tournament as well. That they make a strong case that they could play on that particular stage, pressure and everything. And I think who impressed me the most out of everybody, and it's going to be a shock, was Tyson Forrester. One, he wasn't expected to make the team at all, but the way he just played with his calmness and he was very highly effective really shocked the crap out of me. Because I'm going to be honest, when he was nominated, when he was given the nod, I was like, really? Tyson Forrester? Not that they wanted him for his goal-scoring abilities. You know what I mean? Obviously, he could pop one. He's had, back-to-back 20-goal-plus seasons. He was the first Flyer in a long time to accomplish that. So I think that, him in particular, I was very, very, very impressed with. But, no surprise that TK had a great tournament. Travis Sanheim, I thought, had a good tournament. He didn't get beat very often, and stuff. He did at times, but not very often at all. And I think he transitioned and played the position well. I think he did very well. So, yeah, not surprising. A little bit surprising that Canada, didn't medal, or at least move on. But they definitely exceeded expectations, especially when you have a Crosby, Crosby on your team. You're supposed to perform better. Just Crosby alone, So, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that Canada team has some real talent. Crosby, McKinnon, TK, Montour, O'Reilly, Noah Dobson, just to name some guys off the top of my head.
Yeah.
That is a talented team, Canada team. So seeing them lose Denmark like that was quite surprising.
Well, you know what? That's what scares me for the Olympics, because that should put fuel to the fire and piss them off. So look for Team Canada in that Olympic Games, man, to really make a statement. I'll tell you, if they crap the bed for that particular tournament, oh my word! Eric, you live there. Canada would be on fire, man. I'll tell you that, man. Seriously.
There's going to be meetings. There's going to be God knows what going on. State of emergency. What's wrong with Canadian?
Oh, man. Listen, man. National Guard. Everybody's coming in there.
They'd have to fall back onto their Four Nations championship.
I'm serious with this. I mean, I'm being dead serious. Man, I'd hate to live in Canada at that time if that were the case.
They had, if I'm not mistaken, they had like it's a word I'm blanking on, but like a meeting of some sort or something to discuss, like, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, I remember, to discuss goaltending and what's going on with goaltending.
Yeah.
Canada cannot produce goalies anymore. It's ridiculous.
Well, you figured one of their top netminders is now under trial, and that was Carter Hart. You know what I mean? And taken away. So to be honest, like you just meant, that is a big loss when you think about not only the Flyers aspect, but for a Canadian aspect. I mean, just imagine Carter Hart probably would have been in the Worlds there. At the World Tournament, at least as a backup, at the very least. So that is a big loss. That's great. You bring that point up. To be honest with you.
Should be, and it should be interesting to see if they try to carry that fuel a little bit into the Olympics. But yeah, overall, back on the main point, I think the Flyers players did play well. They stood out a bit. And I'm excited, hopefully, that they can carry this momentum into next season a little bit. Speaking of one of those Flyers, someone on that team just earned himself a new contract. A couple of days ago, I believe it was it Thursday, I want to say? I believe it was Thursday. The news was dropped. Tyson Forster signed a brand new extension for 2 years, $3.75 million AAV. I was pleasantly surprised to see the number that low. I was expecting it to be in the low fives at least, like $5 million at the minimum, and maybe even pushing to 5.5. With the fact that he had that good of a jump to start. I personally was hoping he would agree to a long-term deal, but I'm trying to look at this in the big picture of what they want to do with this. So the sheer fact that he agreed to a contract in the high threes tells me two things. Number one, the most important thing, especially in the term of the contract, is this guy's banking on himself for a bigger payday. He knows the cap's going up. He knows he's going to have an opportunity to continue to prove himself. And if he can do that, that 5 that he could have potentially signed himself for will look more like a 7 potentially when he gets his next contract, maybe even more if he continues to exceed his expectations. And number two, the Flyers are planning on making some moves. The fact that they ended up getting him in the high threes, I bet you they sat him down and said, listen, Tyson, we're going to revisit this next offseason. We want to make sure that you at least get a fair sum, but we're going to need X amount of money to potentially make some moves out there. And the fact that I originally thought that he was going to get 5.25 or something like that, maybe that $1.5 million extra could go elsewhere to whatever target they might be going after, who we'll mention shortly. But I was very elated about the actual contract as a whole. I did want a long-term deal, but if we're going in a short-term bridge, this is about as good as you can get. You got it for 2 years. You can go right back to the table at the end of this season if you want to potentially bring up some possible extension thoughts. And that's something I assume they'll do, especially if he has another really good this year. I think they're going to want to lock him up and not have to worry about that number continuing to rise and talk to him and say, listen, we want you here now. The length of that deal, we're going to try to get it to 6-7 years so we don't have to worry about this for a while, and we'll lock you up. Because the team might know that, as I just mentioned, that number is going to try to significantly increase. But as I mentioned about Tyson, he's been a good kid here since day one. As you mentioned, Jamey, back-to-back 20-plus goal seasons. This year he was playing on a line with Noah Cates and Bobby Brink, who are good, solid players, but they garnered some good chemistry, but they're not like tops. I wouldn't put either of them as a real top 6 forward, at least yet. Maybe they could prove themselves more over these next few years, but those are both probably third-line guys, realistically. Could they potentially exceed my expectations? Who knows? I look at Brink and Cates both as third-line players, good third-line players, but still third-line players that he played the majority of the year with. And he excelled there, and he ended up second on the team in goals. The only guy who was behind was Matvei Michkov by 1 goal. And if Matvei didn't have that 2-goal game to end the year, Tyson Forster would have been your goal leader for the season. So it definitely, he deserved the contract. I think the deal itself is an A. I think Danny did a great job. And I expect this to lead to some potential domino effect about the Flyers potentially bringing some outside talent in here, whether it's by trade, free agency. I think it's going to be more likely trade. I don't think they're going to be major players in free agency, but we'll see a lock and change from now to next month. Free agency bonanza's a month away, so who the hell knows? But overall, I like the deal. Jamey, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a very good deal, and I think the fan base needed that. I think that, they were starting to lose faith there in Danny Briere for a second there, in the top regime, especially some that weren't very happy with the Rick Tocchet signing. You know what I mean? Hiring that, Rick Tocchet as the head coach. They thought, that, they're just bringing the good old boy system back. So Danny Briere needed to put some faith back into those naysayers who may, or who didn't seem as high with the Tocchet hiring, who don't seem as high with the Flyers now. Now everyone has come back down to earth and is loving Danny Briere again, because I'm going to be honest, I was kind of shocked they got him for under 4. I thought it would be anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5. I didn't think he eclipsed the 5 mil mark because he didn't hit that goal mark, to achieve, the 5 mil. 25 plus, 26, 27. If he eclipsed 28 like Owen Tippett did, the prior year, that now we're talking, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So, but I thought that they would like to go long term, and I think that they did have discussions for that. I think that's become very aware that they wanted to possibly lock him up long term. But like you mentioned, Alex, the AAV, he was probably asking for a little higher AAV, maybe 5.5, 6, per year if they wanted to go long term. Especially with the cap raising, like you said. Now the Flyers are in a little bit of a pickle here, because I think that's why they wanted to lock Owen Tippett up early last year before they really had to. If Owen hit that 30 goal mark, now his price raised to 7. So now they're not paying him, 6.25, now a 7 mil plus. There's different levels for 30 plus. You know what I mean? If he eclipsed the 30 goal mark, now he would have been 7 plus. Same thing like Tyson Forster. If he's eclipsing the 30 goal mark next year, I want the Flyers to lock him up, at the end of next season. Only because you're expecting him to now go to 35, 40. And what that means is that the cap again rises, for him. His AAV is going to rise. Now 35, 40, now you're talking about anywhere from $7 to $8 million per season. So as he hits each goal plateau, it's gonna go higher and higher. And I think that's why they locked Owen Tippett up last year, when they did at the trade deadline, right before the trade deadline. I think that was because they were banking on him to hit 30 plus this year, and it didn't happen. You know what I mean? So, but nonetheless, I think it's still a very good signing. Again, I think that brings the fan base. It gets them really happy and motivated again. Because like you said, Alex, he took a bit of a pay cut. He didn't have to sign for 3.75. He could have asked for at least 4. But I think he is about winning. I think he wants, the Flyers to make some moves. And how do you make some moves? There was one player, and it's one of Alex's probably favorite players because he lives within the Boston area. Tom Brady took what every year? He took a pay cut. Each freaking year, that dude took. He was one of the lowest paid quarterbacks, for how great of a talent he was. He could have easily garnered anywhere from 40 to 50 million, 60, 70 million dollars. No. What did he do? No. Oh, I'll take a pay cut. I'll only make 20 million on my last season. I only take 15 million here, because he wanted to win. You're not going to win. The more money you have to spend equals what? Bringing in maybe 1 to 2 more players. That 1 to 2 more players could be a difference maker for your team. That could be a goaltender that, in hockey level. That could be a goalie. That could be a defenseman. That could be, maybe, who knows what it could be. But that could be a trade, yeah. So I'm pretty stoked that Tyson Forster's banking on himself, I should say. Sorry.
I think I think you hit the hammer on the nail on a lot of those points. The fact that he's taking the pay cut, it's that team friendly ideal to him. I don't know if I call him the Tom Brady quite yet, but I get where you're coming from. Yeah. But yeah, I think Tyson has definitely shown to be a team guy, and he knows that betting on himself there, as you mentioned, if he got to 27, 28 goals, maybe that number could have been maybe mid-high 5, something like that. But yeah, I'm definitely glad that he ended up taking that pay cut, and we're going to see the benefits of that long term. Eric, what do you think?
No, look, this is pretty much more or less what I expected. We did like a couple episodes ago where we kind of projected Forster's next contract. And I remember saying, like, I don't see him going long term. I think he's gonna take a short term contract. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the example I gave was 3 by 4.5, which I thought would have been really in that market, like in that range. And look, he ended up taking 2 by 3 it's 3.75, right? So yeah, look, it makes sense for the player. In the off season that he's gonna have to cash in, the cap's gonna be at $113 million. Like, bet on yourself, man. Like, bet on yourself. Because if he would think like if he would have gone long term, I'm sure he would have got something closer to like a not Joel Farabee, because Joel Farabee got like 5 or 5.5, but I'm thinking it would have been closer to 6.5, 7.
Yeah.
But like, what if he's a 35 goal scorer or a 40 goal
Oh,
scorer in the
man.
next couple of years?
Dude,
You're
now we got
paying this guy $9-10 million easy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the one thing where I think it might hurt, not necessarily hurt the Flyers, but now him and Mishkov are going to be both RFAs the same offseason. In the 27 offseason.
Oh, I didn't even think of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So you're going to
That's
have
why
to
I
pay
think they don't
Forster.
Damn.
They're going to have to pay Forster and Mishkov the same offseason.
Oh,
So,
man.
like, we'll see. But again, like I said, look, the cap's going to be at like 113 million by then.
Mhm.
So, and who knows where it's going. I think at a certain point, it will like stay like kind of like plateau.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
like, just to say like, so yeah, look, I'm happy for the kid. He got like a nice. It's good right now. It's good for both, right? We got a nice low cap hit. He's getting paid like a nice chunk of money, and then like hopefully if he pans out the way a lot of us hope he will, and probably the way he thinks he will, he's gonna have a nice payday. So you know what? Good for him. And look, I think personally, I believe like I have nothing to tell me otherwise, but like I believe that he wanted to go short term, and probably if he wanted to go long term, he was probably asking for something a little more ridiculous that the Flyers wouldn't be comfortable with.
Yeah.
So because it would be a risk. But like someone brought up a good point. I read this somewhere. It's like for the Flyers to save now really makes no sense, because it's like it's not like we're adding anybody now. So like for the money that we're saving now on this contract, really doesn't help us that much because we're not adding now. Like basically when that contract is up is when we're gonna be looking to like make big additions and big. So, but again, like look, at the end of the day, like I said, like I'm happy for the kid. The kid got paid, and he's betting on himself, and you know what? Good for him, man.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't know if I 100% agree that they're not adding now. I don't know. I'm not saying they're going to go all in this offseason, but next offseason, 2026, has seemed like the real plan, and that'll be the second year of his contract. So I definitely could think that they're kind of panning out, because I think we can all agree these next two off seasons, this one here and next year, are the biggest off seasons of the Danny Briere regime, without a doubt. What's going to be happening, taking that next transition into potentially getting out of this rebuild? Do I expect them to do this all-in crazy approach this offseason? Absolutely not. No. But I do expect them, they've made it apparent that they don't want to go back to the bottom of the standings again. So I do expect at least one or two decent ads. I'm not saying you're going to add a Mitch Marner. I don't think that's likely going to happen. Would I be open to the idea? Yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't. But I would also say that you got to make the right call at the right time, too. And I don't think they have the cap and resources to go after a Mitch Marner at this moment. Would I be open for it? Yes, but I don't think they are, is what I'm saying. And number two, you make a really good point, Eric, about this that I forgot to mention. This deal keeps him an RFA. He's still an RFA after this. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to worry about him sniffing free agency. I think he's got another year or two of RFA eligibility, even if they wanted it to have gone 3 years. So it's big there. I think 2026 is going to be a lot more significant than we believe, not just because of the potential of free agency, but Mitchkov and Forster potentially coming up. They're probably going to want to lock one or maybe both of those guys up before 2027 offseason hits, so they don't even have to worry about it.
You know, one thing, that's why I don't think that they're going to make a big splash in the RFA pool. Thinking about it with what Eric just said, you know, about Mitchkov and Forster entering, you know, the RFA pool at the same time, I could see maybe an enemy, maybe the New Jersey Devils or something, swing in and say, okay, well, we're going to make an offer for Tyson Forster for 5 years for $12 million per. And handcuff the Flyers, or hey, 5 years, $14 million. You want him that bad, or do you want Mitchkov? You know what I mean? So I could see a team posturing, the Flyers that way. And what I would do, I would lock him up at the end of this season. If he has another 20-goal season, I'd lock him up so he doesn't hit the RFA level. At least one of Mitchkov or Forster, so they're not handcuffed. They're going to come to a point to where, yeah, they'll have money now, but think about it. They're not going to have much. Mitchkov's going to garner, 10 to 12 himself. You know what I mean? Possibly. You know what I mean? So, then you have a Tyson Forster adding in what? Like we just discussed, each goal that he goes up, it's another 10, million to 2 million is where I would lock him up.
Yeah. I hope they do. I have a feeling they will. I don't think they're going to take any chances about this going to RFA eligibility in 2027. I could see both Forster and Mitchkov next offseason get locked up to not even try to sniff that. And if someone's offering Forster $12 million, I'm not matching that. No fucking way. I love Tyson, but I'm not $12 million in love with the guy unless if he proves me wrong otherwise. But who knows?
I agree, but then that's a loss, in terms of the player himself. You know what I mean? And look, he signed with every name. He had all his all his teammates, signatures on the hat. That's what I mean. You're losing. That's what I mean. You're losing not only a player on the ice, but you're losing one off the ice. And I think the Flyers can only lose so many more, leaders in that locker room. So I think, I don't know. That would be a loss. But yeah, I wouldn't match it either. But it'd still be a loss nonetheless.
Oh, for sure. I absolutely agree there. But realistically, I think we look at the big picture. They're likely locking both of these guys up after this offseason, especially if Tyson takes the step that we all anticipate that he continues to do. I'm gonna wait to make my full prediction with this. I bet I got a hiccup mid-sentence. But I will say this. I feel very confident that Tyson's going to be a 30-plus goal scorer next year. I feel very confident that he put at least come closer, probably eclipses that. I'm not going to I don't want to give a full giveaway because as we get closer to the season, we're going to start making some bold predictions for the year. But I feel confident that Tyson's going to be a guy that we look at and be like,
nice.
So we feel confident with long term.
Yeah.
Any other things on the Tyson front before we move on?
Yeah. Well, just one last thing I want to say, and one thing I really like about like these bridge deals and why I'm also very pro bridge deal is also the fact that because now that you gave him another 2 years, when he signs that next big extension, like he's gonna by the time the next big extension ends, he's gonna be like 33. So like 33. So you're not giving it's not like because now if you sign him, let's say long term, then you're gonna have to sign him again when he's like 29 or 20 or 30. Then they're like, oh, well, we want to give him another extension, but now you're getting killed on the final years of that second extension. Yeah. So at least this way, you get all the prime years, and then when a player, and I'm not saying just for Tyson Forster, I mean this in general, then you give him that last extension, he's 33, 34, then you could be like, okay, but listen, buddy, now you're declining and everything, so then you don't give him another massive extension. You just give him like a 2 to 3 year deal at like a decent number, and that's why I'm like very pro bridge deals.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that too. I'm usually pretty pro bridge deals. It just depends on the player, but I like this deal a lot for sure. But anyway, let's move on to our next topic. Flyers have been sniffing in the trade market a little bit. Rumors were reported with a report originally from Anthony DeMarco stating that the Flyers and Wild have been in trade discussions for center Marco Rossi. Rossi last year, 24 goals, 36 assists, 60 points, only 23 years old, had a pretty damn good year with the Wild. I think the year before he had 41 points, so it's pretty significant increase in point production, almost up 50%. When you look at this is a little surprising, especially with how his tenure in the playoffs with the Wild ended. He would start to get fourth line usage, which is really surprising, especially with the year that he had, especially at the age he is. So, what is your take on the Marco Rossi trade news, gentlemen? Eric, let me start with you on this one. Is this someone you're interested in? The reports, mind you, before I hand it off to you, the reports were that the Wild were looking for either Tyson Forster, funny enough, or one of the Flyers' late round first. I'm guessing probably the Colorado pick, since that one is more value. So let me ask you, Eric, what did you think of this report? And did you agree or disagree that that may or may not be too much?
Well, also touching on the report, first of all, I wouldn't give up Forster for Rossi 1-for-1. I wouldn't do it. I'm too much of a Forster fan, and like at the end of the day, like we need good players. So it's like you're removing one good player to bring one in. You're just going lateral now. It's just a lateral move. So what's the point? As it comes to like I don't know, the report said either Forster or a late round draft. I don't believe that for Minnesota. Like, why would they trade a player of his caliber just for a draft pick? Like, they're a team that's in like win now mode ish. Like, they're not like there yet, but like they have cup aspirations. This is a team that's going upwards, not downwards. So I don't see them trading Marco Rossi just for 22. They would probably ask for like a player, and I could see like a player in a second rounder. Probably is that's probably what they're looking for. But I think they really want an established player, preferably a center, because we all know why. Like Bill Guerin just hates his size. It's as easy as that. Like he's 5'9". Like he's not. The thing is though, like he's short, but he's thick though. Like if you ever see him like on the ice, the guy's like he's just so thick and like so like guys like that. Even though you're short, you're not hard to get off the puck though. So because you got that weight, you got that muscle, and look, to tell you, like I would not mind to trade for Marco Rossi. I really wouldn't mind. Forster is a non-starter for me, but at the same time, like I like Rossi, but I don't think he's a 1. I don't
agree
think
with that.
I don't think
he's a high to mid 2.
Exactly, but like if that's the guy that's available and that's the guy the Flyers target right now, like fine, I don't mind bringing him in. But at that point, then you're hoping that whoever you're going to draft this year or Luchenko turns out to be a legit 1. That's the so that's why I don't think Rossi's high on the Flyers like wish list, but like I wouldn't be surprised if he is a guy they bring in though.
Good points, very good points. How about you, Jamey? What do you think?
So I agree with Eric. I agree with him in a way that I believe that this was a bit of posturing, like by the Wild or the Flyers. I'm not so sure which team would have leaked that out. I'd more say the Wild than the Flyers. And the reason I say that is like usually the Flyers information is usually pretty tight-lipped. I don't know if they would leak that out, but they have in the past in terms of like who the Flyers are leaning towards, to draft and stuff like that, like to steer teams away from drafting Chet Luchenko, for instance. You know what I mean? Not many people, with the asides for like Craig Button, had the Flyers taking Luchenko, with that selection, and here they took him. So, there's a bit of posturing that comes out. Everyone had, the Flyers taking Ryan Leonard. He was a slam dunk. Like, oh man, they passed on Leonard, or you know what I mean? So that's what I mean, Flyers fans. So they do this, teams do this, they leak information out that isn't true. I just can't see this as being true. But I see the Flyers having interest for sure. I'm not discrediting Anthony's report in terms of that. I'm not discrediting his report. I believe the Flyers have had talks, have had some interest. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that is far too low for a player like Rossi. He just put up 24 and 36. I can't see a 7x7. I see maybe a 7x8, maybe a 7x9, because, if you're talking about, averages, AAVs and stuff, 7x8 or 9, you're banking on that player to be that player, that 70, that 80 point guy, that 90 point guy, in the future. That's what you're banking on. 60 points at the age of 23 is a lot of damn points. You know what I mean? I don't care. He may have been misused or whatever. The kid at 23 years old put 60 points up in the NHL, arguably the top league in the world. That is saying something. That means next season, now you're expecting 70. That means the season after, you're banking 80. You're banking 90. So I think 7x7 is low. The Flyers would definitely trade a 22nd overall pick in a heartbeat for a player of Rossi and sign him to 7x7, which Frank Saravelli mentioned. That's what they were looking for. The Wild, that's what Marco Rossi, that's the holdup. That's not a holdup with Minnesota. I see the holdup being 8 or 9, maybe banking. That's what I think the holdup is. That's why I think it's posturing. I think that they want to bring that AAV down. They're not solidified on being 8 or 9. They're probably at the 7.5 mark. That's probably where Minnesota is. 7.5 tops, not the 8 or 9 that Rossi's camp is looking for, per if you want to go long term, as opposed to doing a bridge deal, which so I think this is posturing. That it's posturing to the best that it would be.
It's interesting you bring up Minnesota's side of this, Jamey, because I wonder if Minnesota even wants to keep the guy anymore at all, because I think this could potentially, just for the sheer fact of how they used him in the playoffs, fact that a guy, go ahead, Jamey.
Well, so I forgot to touch on that. So his usage in the playoffs, you're looking at Rick Carlisle for the Indiana Pacers, right? So I don't know if you paid attention to the NBA playoffs or what, but Rick Carlisle uses his entire bench. He'll take out Miles Turner, arguably one of their best players, put him on the bench with 1 minute to 2 minutes left, believe it or not. And commentators have mentioned that. I can't believe Miles Turner's on the bench. I can't believe this other player's on the bench. So they're in a win mode now, win now mode. Maybe that's a bit of what Rick Carlisle does. Hey, I'm gonna throw you on the fourth line. I'm gonna put you on the third line. I don't know. So I understand where a lot of people are coming from in terms of his usage, but I don't know.
I don't know. I just feel like that's apples to oranges, though, when it comes to basketball versus hockey. Just because you're running such smaller rotations in basketball, where hockey, you got to use all 4 lines, but when push comes to shove, you need your stars to really show up and perform, and the best way to do that is to have them play with guys that they have consistency with, number one, and number two, to give them more minutes compared to other guys. But really, the weird thing is just the fact that I think Minnesota knows that they don't have the leverage in this because this leak came out. I think the fact that him getting used in the fourth line, the reports of him potentially being sent elsewhere, they know they're not going to be able to maximize the asset. So teams, aka like the Flyers, might be penny pinching a little bit, trying to see if you can bring down their offer and say, hey, listen, we know this guy wants out now. You guys have a potential relationship that can or cannot be repaired. So I saw something on Twitter that was interesting. A few people mentioned this. They might be looking to see if they can either maybe A, talk them into the Edmonton pick versus the Colorado pick, or B, maybe try to talk this into, say, a second and a player, as Eric mentioned. Like, for example, maybe a second and a Cates. If you're giving up a center and you give them a center with a little bit more size, I know a Cates who's 6'2" and pushing close to 200 pounds, that might be more down Bill Guerin's alley, is a guy like that. So maybe say, hey, listen, we're not going to give you that 22nd pick, but maybe you'd be more interested in, let's say, the Anaheim second and Noah Cates. Maybe they're trying to talk them into something like that. I don't know. I do wonder if a lot of their leverage, though, has been lost with this report being leaked. And it's interesting. I kind of come back to that Cutter Gauthier situation. That was never mentioned to the media. That was never brought up to people. That was always something that was kept on the low. And the Flyers, at least to the best of our knowledge, maximized the value to the best they could. They got Jamey Drysdale, who's still only, 23 years old, who looked like he took a step in the second half of the year, as you, Jamey, called it was going to happen. Excellent call there, by the way. Drysdale took that step forward, and he looks like a guy that could potentially be a solidified top 4 offensive defenseman in this team for a long time. In that second-round Anaheim pick that I just mentioned they might be giving up. It's a pretty good deal in the big picture because Jamey Drysdale is a former number 6 overall pick in 2020. So I do wonder if part of this could just be loss of leverage versus maybe them just trying to leak this. I do agree that the Flyers, at the end of the day, if they kept going back and forth, probably would be inclined, if they felt like a team was pushing their offer, maybe to give up one of those first and maybe push the Edmonton first more than Colorado. But I do think that they feel more comfortable that it's not what I would do, because I personally would give up that 22nd pick to get Marco Rossi. But I think that from where they're thinking, they're trying to maximize this trade as much as possible to lower the price because the fact that it got leaked. That's just my guess, though. I do think Rossi would be a good fit here. You know, he plays hard of the net for his size, for sure. I watched a little bit of his tape after the reports came out, and I noticed a lot of his goals came within 10 feet of the net. He's someone who plays bigger than his size indicates. It's something that I think Rick Tocchet would welcome in his system, especially when he plays a style that's a little more grindish than people think. But, you know, I do think having a guy like that, yeah, you lose a little bit of size, but you get a talent like that puts up 60 points at the age of 23, that's going to be hard to pass up on. I definitely, me personally, I'd give up 22, but I think the Flyers are trying to lowball it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if all it took was 22, I'm surprised this trade wouldn't even have happened already.
Yeah.
It would have. It would have.
Like, I don't know if you even gonna get close to a player of Marco Rossi's caliber at 22.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't buy that late first round reporting, because I'm sure this would have gotten done already. And like you said, and see, and that's one thing though we have to distinguish is size and height. Height and size. It's because like you said, a lot of his goals in the front. Because the guy is almost 200 pounds at 5'9".
Yeah.
He is huge. He's just you can't move the guy. And there's a difference between a player that's 5'9", 160 or 5'9" and 190. You can't move these guys. And sometimes because they're shorter, they're shiftier in front of the net, because now they could go wherever they want and you can't move them. So that's why I would be thrilled if we traded for Marco Rossi, but also depending the cost.
Yeah. I agree there. I listen, I'm all in on Marco Rossi. Like you mentioned, I don't think he's a 1C, but I do think he has the potential to be a high-end 2C. Right now, I think he's like a mid-2C, but I think he could take another step to be a guy who could push 70, 75 points, be a 30-goal, 45-assist guy when he hits his prime. I do see that in him. I think 80 is probably his ceiling, but I could see him consistently being in the 70s constantly as a high-end 2C. He'd probably be our 1C if he came here now, but is he a cup team 1C? I don't think so.
I see this type of deal happening on draft day, depending on who the Flyers draft. If they get Higgins, I can't see the Flyers saying, okay, let's go get Marco Rossi too, and then having two really small players size down the middle, hey, okay, we'll have Higgins at 1 or 2 and Rossi as 1 or 2. I mean, that size down the middle, I think, matters for how Philly wants to try to shape up their rebuild, in my opinion. So I think if Higgins is there, at 6, or, I think that they'll scoop him up and won't trade for Rossi. Whereas, if they miss on Higgins and say they get Jake O'Brien or Anton Frondell or something of that nature, more sizable, players, then I could see them possibly saying, okay, we'll have interest in, Marco Rossi, because we could have another undersized center. So I think that who they take at 6 matters.
Yes. Honestly, that is a very good point you make, Jamey, and I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that, because this could be something that goes all the way to the trade to draft day. This is why I've emphasized, by the way, everyone, we will be doing a live stream on the Don't Puck With Media channel for the draft. Tune in for that. It's going to be fun. We're going to be all here for it. You're going to see a lot of our reactions, good and bad. So just wanted to throw that little tidbit out there. We will be doing a live stream for that day. Do not miss that. It's going to be a blast. But yes, I will say when it comes to this, this doesn't have to be done today. It doesn't have to be done tomorrow. It doesn't have to be done this week, next week, whatever. The draft is 26 days away. June 27th is the draft day. This could be something that starts to pick up steam as teams get into the teens, and the Wild want to get another pick into the first round and say, hey, we want 22, Philly. We're willing to give you Rossi with the sign and trade. Now or never. Let's do this. Team Flyers might be more willing to, answer that call as the time gets closer to pick 22. But definitely something that's going to be worth watching. Speaking of the draft, before we move on, anyone else have anything else to touch up on that?
No. Well, the only thing I'll say is, again, like going back to Tyson Forrester and Marco Rossi, same thing. Like, you should just take a bridge deal.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I think a lot of the big concern is like with Rossi, his size and everything. So it's like, you want to commit long term to a guy like that? If that's the case, buddy, take a 2-year, like 5.5, maybe. I'm sure somebody will offer you that. And then bet on yourself, man. Bet on yourself, because then at the end of the day, like Tyson Forrester, when you're going to be an RFA again, the cap's going to be at 115 million, and someone's going to dish out.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, let's move on to our next topic, the draft. Speaking of which, that's getting close. We are officially in draft month, boys.
Yeah.
Countdown clock is on. This is the first week of June. And we're recording this on June 1st. The first week of June is usually when you start to see trades happen a little bit. It's when the Cup final begins. You'll see a trade or 2 or 3 trickle right before or during the Cup final. If I remember correctly, 2 years ago, that's when the Flyers made that massive Provorov blockbuster with Columbus and the Kings. I think it was like June 6th or June 5th, something like that. So around that point. So, with that being said, draft's coming up. As we've known now for weeks, the Flyers dropped from 4 to 6. Sucks, but is what it is at this point. We got some options, though. So, Jamey, let me start with you. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Who is your preferred pick at pick number 6? And is there anyone else maybe in the later rounds you might have this team have some interest in?
James Higgins all day, and I'll tell you, because of that interview I had with him, just solidified that. It was like, if he falls to the Flyers at 6, which is a probability, it could very well happen. I think the player that would be in question is Porter Martone, depending on where he would fall. I think that he's one, depending on where teams see him fit. I think that's a key player. If Porter Martone gets taken at 3 or 4. I could really see James Higgins falling to the Flyers at 6. It could very well happen, and he's very mature for his age. I'm telling you, like talking to many young prospects his age, 17, 18. After doing interview after interview with these guys, for the past few seasons and years before that, he's one of the very few that is so mature, answering questions. Like, it's not 1 or 2 word answers. These questions, that he was, I asked my first question, playing for Boston College, Alex, you live around the Boston area. You're very familiar with Boston College, how good that program is year in and year out. With the way they scout and, with the way they recruit their players, they're getting top-notch players year after year. Is it very tough to play for that type of team like that? Does it add more pressure knowing that at least 3 to 4 players aren't going to be there next year, whether they enter the draft, whether they're going to another professional league because of how well they played, and he went on, just a small question like that, went on and talked for 2 to 3 minutes, giving an answer. I mean, you don't find that from 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-olds very often. Usually they're 1 or 2 word answers. Yeah, no, I don't. It doesn't add more pressure. No, I love this program. I want to play here, yada, and that's it. He went on for 2 to 3 minutes, gave a whole 3 paragraphs, and that's what I mean. Yeah, he's classically trained, to interview, but he's also very mature in the way he answers. He doesn't hesitate. That's it. He answers right away, right away. It doesn't have to think, just right away. You don't find that. So Higgins is my pick at 6, hands down. If he's there, I don't care about the size. I don't this kid. The Flyers would have an elite center for years to come. Whether it's going to be, they'll have Higgins and Luchenko, whoever, oh man, just thinking about it, him playing with, TK possibly and Matvei Michkov, the stuff he said about Michkov alone, saying, Philadelphia is a great sports city. I would love to play with the talent like Mafi Mishkov. He said he watched the Flyers games this year. Watching Mafi Mishkov play. So that means that the Flyers have been on his radar for some time. He's not just watching Flyers to watch the Flyers. You know what I mean? Although he watches a lot of hockey, but he's watching the Flyers probably because they showed interest in him. And we'll see just how much interest. The scouting combine begins tomorrow. And that's why a lot of trades are. How you talked about trades. The combines. January. June 2nd to what the 4th or 5th. Something like that. So it's a high probability. All the GMs are there. They're all in one area. So it's like, hey, you see a GM. Hey, how about? Are you really trading JJ Perteka? They're within walking distance of each other. You know what I mean? They're not. The phone goes away. They don't need to make phone calls anymore. You know what I mean? So that's why some trades happen the way they do. So we'll see Hagens, talk to Philly, possibly tomorrow or maybe the next day and see what he has to say.
Interesting. I actually loved how detailed it, and that's something about a prospect to me that really stands out. It's someone who shows levels of maturity. It goes a long way. You not only just mentally, but physically too.
Yeah.
If you have that mindset of knowing the right thing to do and say at such a young age, that can do wonders for your growth and your development down the line. Like this kid Hagens, the reports on him, he was originally looked at as a number 1 pick going into the year.
Yeah.
He kind of fell a little bit. He didn't quite have the big year that a lot of people expected him to have in Boston College, and that's okay. The kid still is a great skater and a great playmaker. Those are the two things that stand out to me the most about his game. His speed is fabulous. He makes quick decisions on the blink of an eye. His passing is superb. I feel like the one knock that I heard was his hesitancy, but that's something that can be coached. That is definitely something that can be coached down the line. I think he's a really talented kid. Jamey, let me ask you this. Who's maybe a potential late round guy? I shouldn't say late round, but maybe someone they may want to use with one of these firsts or seconds you have here.
You know what I would do? If Roger McQueen falls to 11 or 12, I'm telling you what the Flyers should do is trade the 22nd pick, move up, whatever it takes to move up. And I'm not saying give away the house. 22nd pick, maybe a player or something of that nature, a low line player. We're not talking about, hey, trade Travis Konechny or Owen Tippett or somebody like that. We're talking about a low level player, in the 22nd, move up to 11 or 12, take Roger McQueen. There you solidified, your center. One of them is going to pan out. Either it's going to be McQueen, who could fall because of injury issues. And, there has been a sense to where teams are he's not in a lot of mocks. You're seeing him, 12. I've seen him as low as 19 or 20 because teams are just scared because of his injury history. If that's the case, I don't care. If I'm Philly, I'm risking it. You know what I mean? They're going to, that's what I would do. And then with the other pick, the Edmonton pick, Ilya Rabakin, if he's there, I snag him.
Yes.
That'd be a hell of a damn. You get a Hagens, McQueen, and Rabakin. That's the best first round freaking ever for Philadelphia history, I think.
That would be something. That's for sure. The thing there is always one prospect that free falls every year that no one expects. Last year, I think Cole Eiersman was probably the name that I feel like he was looked at in like 10 to 12 range. He dropped to 21. You go back another year before that, Benson, who went to Buffalo, he was looked at like 5 or 6. He dropped to 13. Montreal fans remember Cole Caulfield. He was someone that was looked at like pick 4 or 5. He dropped to 15. It happens so often that a guy and even if you want to look at last year too, Z Boyum was looked at like 3 or 4. He dropped to 12. So there's always someone that drops that we don't expect, or more that we expect to drop. Roger McQueen could be that guy, definitely. For me personally, the guy I kind of had a few names, but the guy I've been weaning on now is still Anton Frundell. But it's not as consensus as it was. Originally, it was Frundell and then a bit of a drop. Now it's like Frendel, Desnoyers. So it's close. I would be elated with either of those two. Higgins is right around there too. He would probably be my very close third. But again, I'd be thrilled with any of those three. But Desnoyers has shot up my list over these last few weeks, for sure. But it's still Anton Frendel for now. Fantastic two-way game. Has a piss missile of a shot. His issue has been his play driving and playmaking, but I do feel like that has gotten better, and his scouts have looked at that a little bit more and have taken a step forward as well with that they feel like it's not as much of a concern as it once was. But yeah, Frendel is someone I feel like that the worry with him is people think he might not be a natural center, which I get. He could potentially be more of a left winger. But it's someone that I look at that I feel comfortable that even if for some reason he doesn't, and I still feel confident that he will. I know he's not the most successful play driver and playmaker, which gives people, reason for pause, which I completely understand. But I look at him in his play, and I feel like it's someone that has too many tools, arsenals, and weapons to his game that would be a little too difficult to pass up. And at least if he's not a center, he's a left winger, which is something you don't have enough natural talent in. So Frendel, I think when this draft is all said and done, it's possible he could be the best overall player in it. It's not definite, obviously. No one knows for sure. But he has the tools between his shot, his board battle, his two-way game, his hockey IQ. He shows so many good aspects of his game that I'd be willing to take a risk on his playmaking and pick him at number 6. But Desnoyers, I'm high on. James Higgins, I'm high on. I don't think Martone drops. I do think he's picked in the top 5. Another guy that's slowly gone up a little bit is Jake O'Brien. Fantastic playmaker, good puck mover. Again, might be a tiny bit of a reach. I think he's more 8 or 9, but I wouldn't be upset with the pick. I think it would be a good fit, and especially getting a playmaker that can mesh with a Konechny, a Mitchkov, a Forster, a Tippett of that caliber and degree, I'd be happy with as well. As for some guys I have my eyes on in the later round, I think Jamey made a good point moving up to go after a guy like Roger McQueen as a possibility. That would be something if he's, I don't know about 12, but maybe if he gets to 13, because 12's the Rangers. I don't think the Rangers are trading with you for pick 12. But Detroit at 13. Say if he drops to 13 and a McQueen or a Brady Martin is there, I'd be fine with either of those at 13. I think that's a good pick for either of them, at least in that spot. For an actual player in the low end of the first round, Ivan Rabakin, as Jamey mentioned, I'm high on. Another guy that I like is Braden Coates. I don't know if I said his name right.
I think it's Coots.
Yeah. What is it again?
Coots, like Couturier. Coots.
Like Sean, okay, so it is kind of like Sean Couturier style. Already 6 feet, 185 pounds. Plays a good game. I think his two-way game is pretty decent, and he is a pretty good playmaker. So it's someone I definitely look at that I would feel solid with if they took in the later rounds as well. How about you, Eric?
Well, when it comes to the 6th overall pick, look, I've said this before. I still think it's probably going to be between Desnoyers or Higgins. That's what my expectations are. I think Frendel is not going past 5. But this, I've been, again, now because the draft is getting closer and everything, I've been starting to listen to more and more pods or reading stuff about the draft and everything. And one thing that I never thought, but people are actually now thinking that Martone might actually fall, and not fall, but I mean he might actually be there at 6, the 3 centers. When I say 3 centers, I mean Desnoyers, Frendel, and Higgins might go before him. And if that is the case, that's gonna make an interesting decision for the Flyers, because then at 6 you'll have Martone, who I think would be the best player available. But then you have Jake O'Brien that's staring at you in the face, who's the next up of the 3rd tier. I said he's gonna be he's the top of the 3rd tier. I think Jake O'Brien is. So that would be like an interesting decision for the Flyers because you're like, okay, well, do we go with the big winger but he comes with skating problems like
He's gotten comps to Matty Tkachuk. That's pretty good praise.
But see, that's the thing because it's like you hear and like I think I would take Martone if that was the case. But now what would the Flyers do is because a lot of things I hear about O'Brien is like his hockey IQ and his playmaking is super high end, but it's his like he's tall but he's lean, so it's like is he gonna could he grow into that body a bit more? What's he gonna be the next level? So I don't know. It would be like an interesting decision for the Flyers to make, and like I would not want to be at that table being like, oh shit, man, what do we do? Honestly, I don't think Martone will fall because I can't see. Honestly, I can't see the Mammoth or no, Chicago. Right? No, sorry, not the yeah.
No, you're right. The Mammoth are probably Blackhawks.
I was like, yeah, or I can't see one of those teams passing on Martone. Honestly, I don't see it. Like, I don't like. How do you pass up on a like you said? Like, could this guy be Matty Tkachuk when in the future? Like, how do you pass up on a guy like that? So. Honestly, I think it's gonna be either Caleb Desnoyers or it's gonna be Higgins, one of the two. Personally, like I'm okay with either or.
I'd be happy with either one.
Yeah. So yeah, look. So I think that's probably gonna be our decision at 6. But just to say that Martone versus O'Brien would be a very, very interesting subject study, and we'll see. But yeah, so further along in the draft, like Jamey said, trading up for Roger McQueen would be a great idea. I think I would take a chance on his size any day. Like again, I wouldn't take him at 6, but if he were to fall, I wouldn't mind paying the assets. I don't think it would take a player. I think depending on where he falls, all I think it would take is 22 and probably one of your seconds, maybe 2 of your seconds if you really want to get crazy. But I think someone's gonna take a chance on this guy either at like I don't have the in front of me, but like 8, 9, 10, someone's gonna take a chance on this guy. I cannot look. Columbus took a chance on Lindstrom last year, man. Like someone's gonna take a chance on skill and size. It's gonna happen. For me, the
8, 9, and 10. Just to give you a heads up, Seattle, Buffalo, Anaheim would be those 3 teams.
See, like I could see one of those teams easily going for Roger McQueen. Like especially like a team, let's say like Buffalo. Let's say Buffalo doesn't trade that pick.
Makes sense.
Like you could take a chance because man, your cupboard's already loaded. So you could trade a couple of the guys that you have right now and get an established player, and then you'll have another guy like McQueen waiting in the wings. So for me, the player I would like to trade up for, and the more and more I watch videos on this guy, and the more and more I listen to people talk about this guy, is Keyshawn Atkinson, the defenseman, the left-handed defenseman. I like everything I hear about this kid, like his size, his defending, his shot. Apparently this kid has a bomb of a shot. Like he screams flyer to me, and like I don't know, like for me the lights blinking. Like this is the guy I want. I would really, and it depends which mock you look at because I've seen him as high as like the early 10s, like 11, 12, 13, but I've seen him as low as like 22 to 24. So he's a guy I would keep my eye on to like see, like gauge what other teams are thinking and what's gonna happen. But so he's a guy he's my trade up candidate. And second round, hopefully, is goalie Jack Ivankovic. He's a Canadian goalie. He's a little undersized. Apparently he's like 5'11". He played for Team Canada, the World. He wasn't the starter, but the guy that was the starter, Rothenberg. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's projected to go in the 20s in the first round. So I don't think he'll be available. But everything I hear about this kid, about the Ivankovic, like really, I like. He's getting compared a lot to Dustin Wolf because of the size and their style of play. But one interesting thing that I heard, apparently this kid's dad is like 6'4". And so maybe he just hasn't hit that, like, because you know what? Sometimes, man, at 17, 18, you'll just get a little. So he still has room to grow. So he might end up being like 6'1", 6'2" in the end. So who knows? We'll see, So he's a guy I really like in the second round.
Okay. what do we always say on this show when it comes to goalies? Something Mikey on Twitter always says. ABDG. Always be drafting goalies. That's a spot of need. I don't care how deep you are, because you always got to know to have depth there in case someone doesn't pan out, because that's a very volatile position.
Yeah.
One other thing I do want to add when it comes to this draft, I do think the Flyers have so much ammunition to make anything happen. I will say I kind of agree with you too as well when it comes to Martone. I do think that he'll likely go to either Chicago or the Mammoth. I think the decision with the Flyers is going to come down to they're going to have one of Hagen's, Frendell, or Denoyer. Wow, I just have a tongue twister. I said it right the first time. Denoyer to pick between here. But, yeah, this is going to be an interesting draft. I'm looking forward to it as we get closer. And FYI, everyone, our next episode in 2 weeks is going to be a big one because we did this last year. We're going to be doing it again. It is going to be the second annual Flyera Gonna Flyera mock draft episode where me, Jamey, Eric, who is going to be doing it for the first time, and our guest next week, yes, that's right, we are going to have a guest, Dan Silver from one of our favorite Twitter groups is going to be joining us. Dan Silver has been a fan of the show for a little bit of time. He's from the O&B Puck podcast, affiliate Flyer writer, photo finish of game owner. So give him a like, follow on his Twitter at dsilver88. He is also going to be joining us next week as we do our very first, second ever mock draft episode. I don't know if we're going to be doing the entire draft, but if we do, you can do anything. You can have all the picks taken. You can make trades. You can have trade up, trade down, whatever. The mock draft is anything goes. And that's all we're going to be focusing on next week is our mock draft episode because it's experience from last year. It takes some time. So especially with 4 people here, next episode is going to be purely on mock draft unless if something massive happens. If a big trade happens or something like that or an offer sheet or whatever, we'll go over that as well. But other than that, next episode, I believe June 14th is when we'll be recording this because the day after is Father's Day, so we're going to probably want to lean in recording this on a Saturday versus a Sunday this time. Our Flyera Gonna Flyera mock draft episode. So we look forward to having you guys here for that. We look forward to having Dan Silver from the O&B Puck. He's going to be here. That's going to be a good time. Writer from Philly at Flyer. Give him a follow on Twitter, again, at dsilver88. But with that being said, Eric, do you have anything else to add before we wrap things up?
No, I'm good.
And that's going to be it from me as well. So with that being said, that is going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Another great episode. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us what you think in the comments. If there's any potential guys you might be interested in, any trades you might be interested in. What you think of the Forrester deal? What you think of the Rossi rumors? Flyers at the Worlds? Or just in general, if you want to freelance a little bit in the comments section, you are more than welcome to do that as well. So please, we always welcome it. So, and with that being said, that's going to wrap this episode out. Thank you all for tuning in. And we will see you in 2 weeks for another installment of Flyer Gonna Flyer. And as always, take care and let's go Flyers.